Hey, what's up everyone? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and I have a fun one today. I'm going to be talking about the Niche Pitus Maximus. Yes, it's a fun name. I haven't reviewed this in the past, and originally I meant to, but it sold out so quickly, I just decided not to review something that you could no longer buy new. However, more are in stock, so this one's back. This is the Niche Piety. It came out a year ago, and it's a $175 amp. Very compact. Obviously, it looks like a Schiit product, SCHIIT, but it uses some different topology. It's from the Jotunheim topology more than like a traditional Magnum-Modi, even though it looks like one. External power supply, it's a really fun sound, but today we're here to talk about the big one. So I'm going to make some comparisons to this later, but this is the latest and greatest to come from Niche Audio. So the Pitus Maximus is a beast. It has a ridiculous amount of power. It has some unique changes over the Piety that we'll talk about, but it also still looks familiar. So if you have something like a Modius DAC from Schiit, it's the same size. You can see the difference in size between the two. Now, this is a $500 analog amplifier, headphone amp. It has a pre-out in the back. You can get it at $625 configured with an ESS DAC or $750 with a multi-bit DAC from Schiit as well. It's basically just going to the top-down view right off the rip. This little slot right here is an upgrade slot, basically. So you can swap out the DAC module, or again, you can get it with no DAC whatsoever. Now, eventually, these are always limited production runs. That's why it's called niche sound. It's not a high sample rate. I'm hoping and assuming they're going to make enough for enough people to enjoy, but you can get it with analog and then always buy the DAC module separately from Schiit Direct or just use an external DAC. I did both. I tried out to do pure analog with several different DACs, and I also have the ESS DAC inside here. Now, I think I mentioned this. Yeah, I did mention the price, $500, $625, $750, depending on which module you want. Now, because of this upgrade slot, actually, there's also a phono preamp you can buy from Schiit that is also compatible with this. It's $150. I'll have a link in the description below. It's a moving magnet phono preamp, or MM. So if you have a moving coil or an MC cartridge, those will have a lower output. So just keep that in mind if you're in a unique scenario where you have hard to drive headphones and have an MC cartridge for your turntable, and you buy that preamp, you may not get the volume you're expecting. It's going to be quieter. All right, so looking at the physical design of the amp, I kind of flipped this up earlier, but you have your USB DAC, which is optional, your analog input and output, which does serve as an adjustable preamp, so this volume knob will affect your output on the RCAs there. Rear power switch, just like other Schiit Audio and Niche Audio products, and then your internal power supply. It's a very beefy power supply. There is some pretty substantial weight to it. So more on that after for how that affects the sound. Then you have a couple amazing things up front. Now this volume knob is awesome. Like, it feels so good. It's so solid, no wiggle. It's using an Alps RK27 pot, which is a multi-element wiper system. Basically, it's to average conductivity across the trace. The idea of this whole thing is just to have very consistent, clean volume adjustment. It's not like a scratchy, etchy sound that you get on some other audio products that use an analog knob like this. The Piety, I love the Piety. I've talked about it in a lot of videos just because it's what I travel with. If I can bring a wired headphone, I bring the Piety and just use an Apple dongle. That does have a little bit of an etch to the pot. The potentiometer is not as good. This thing is freaking fantastic. Then you have this switch, a 3-gain switch. Now it's negative 10 dB, 0, and plus 15. So you have a huge swing of gain, and on the negative 10, it's awesome for IEMs. I actually, on a lot of my IEMs, end up just sticking with the 0 gain anyway, just because the stepping on the volume knob is so good that I can still dial it in and get exactly what I want. Then you have your toggle for card and RCA. So this is if you have the included DAC on the back, you would just toggle that. Otherwise, you just leave it on the RCA. And then a 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeter output. I do like how far this is from the volume knob. Obviously, there's a lot of real estate here, but the internal design, with this being the power supply side, these components are going to be on the opposite. But I like that it's spaced out, so if you do have your headphone cable plugged in, you can adjust this without bumping into it. Some of their amp designs, for some reason, they put them really close together. This is closer, but I could still adjust that just fine. But some of them, again, really, really close, and it makes it hard to use. So it's little things like that. You can see that it's well ventilated. It does get warm. It definitely gets noticeably warmer than the Piety does. It gets warmer than things like my Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200, which also has a headphone amp. That thing always stays cold. It gets warmer than the Hi-Fi-Man amps, obviously THX amps. The Burson stuff gets warmer. That Class A amps, they get a little toasty, and that's why their enclosure is basically a giant heatsink. But it doesn't have any active cooling, so there's no humming, no noise coming from the unit, both on a signal level and audibly from the chassis itself. It's dead quiet. So I want to get right into it and talk about sound quality. I have a lot of headphones here. I've tried this on so many things. I've tried it on more stuff than what's here because it's a really impressive amp. And the hardest part, I think, when you get to, this kind of level of performance, when it's not such an obvious coloration, but things just sound better or different in the right way, finding ways to put that into words it can be difficult. And again, it also depends on your source that you're plugging it into, and then what you're driving it or what you're using to drive. Which headphone or IEM are you connected to? So I do my audiophile gauntlet test. I listen to like a couple tracks I like from James Blake, Yoshi Horikawa, this Steely Dan, like all kinds of tracks that I'm really familiar with. I use Radiohead. I use, it's a long list. But I always go through that list and I compare it against other amps. It's songs that I'm always familiar with. But I listen to other music, like a lot of what I consider my normal everyday music. I listen to Korn. I don't care, I'll admit it. There's some good songs from Taylor Swift. I listen to EDM. I listen to rap, you name it. There's just so many things that this sound profile excels at. And because it has insane power output, like over 4 watts of power output at 32 ohms with high current demand. So if you have a really nice plantar magnetic headphone, which when I've been doing this testing, I've been realizing more and more, I don't have a lot of really high-end dynamic headphones. I think it's because I love the HD 650, 6XX, 600 line so much from Sennheiser. I haven't really wanted a lot of other dynamics. Says a lot about that headphone. But I use this to drive the ZMF Caldera, the Meze Elite, the ZMF Atrium Closed, the FiO FT3 Dynamic, because that has like 350 ohms. The Hi-Fi-Man HE1000 SE, Odyssey LCD XC, and the X is on my shelf. I also have the Aria the Aria Organic, and there's a Meze headphone. I've tried a few different things, and I've tried different amps and stuff. This took a while, and that's my review is like 2 days past the announcement of this going public. However, there's some insane stuff that this does. So just getting into it, the Oxytocin song from Billie Eilish, that song slaps. The bass is just insane. It's not like this perfectly produced mix, but that song exposes the bass performance of so many amps and headphones so quickly because it's not super deep bass, but it is really fast. And there's some stuff that, because of the way that's mixed with the vocals and the imaging and that bass note that's moving quick, it really exposes a lot of flaws in like imaging and staging of a headphone, while also showing how much texture, dynamic impact, the depth of the bass. And this, so I'll start with comparing to the Piety. This has a very full, very tight, dynamic, punchy bass. It's super clean, but there is a little bit more depth to it than I get with a traditional solid state amp. There's a little bit more texture and a little bit more heft. It's not like it's emphasizing it. I think it's because of how robust this power supply is. So I'm getting a bass note that feels a little bit more impactful. However, it's also a little bit more crisp and tight than the Piety performance. When I compared it to my Cambridge Audio DAC Magic, I really do like that amp DAC. It's also, I think, like $500. It's pretty underrated, in my opinion, for its performance. It's just underpowered. That's the biggest reason why I think it doesn't always get looked at. but that bass faltered compared to the Pitus Maximus. It wasn't as impactful or dynamic. It actually sounded a little softened. This just hits a little bit harder, but not in like an overly, I guess, an overbearing way. It really is eye-opening, and it brings dynamics to really good planar headphones. Normally I like the planars for their speed, but if I'm looking for like kicks and heavy impact, I would lean more towards Vocal or other, maybe even some closed back dynamics. The ZMF Atrium Close sounded awesome on this because this doesn't have an overly forward upper mid range. It's a little bit smoother. The Piety is a little bit more aggressive, has a little bit more bite in the upper mids, which did not complement the Atrium Closed as much. But the Pitus Maximus, holy crap, even without EQ, I was bumping, listened to a lot of different tracks that I enjoyed. Then you get into the layering of the treble, and it seems more resolving and less veiled than anything under $1,000 that I've used. Now, I have more amp stacks than I've talked about. So I have the Topping A30 D30 stack. I've used the iFi Zen Signature stack. Have some Hi-Fi Min stuff, the THX, the Cambridge products. I'm trying to think what else. I have JDS. There's a lot of excellent amps out there, but I haven't found one that has this level of clarity and poise with delivering musical notes while also having that subtle but evident intimacy and bass performance. It's like the best balance of both sides of the spectrum in music. It stages well. I think Burson audio amps have a little bit more energetic, playful sound in the upper frequencies. But I don't know if it's because of this. When you look at the way the intimacy is on the vocals, they always sound just slightly thinner. And I just reviewed the Conductor 3X GT. That's a $3,000 amp DAC. Amazing amp DAC, crazy powerful. But this sounds a little bit better in the vocal area because it has that touch of warmth and intimacy that I really like in headphones. To me, I love, the reason why I bought the Caldera last year or earlier this year is because of how much I loved every facet of sound that this thing made. But when you complement it with an amp like this or the Niche DSHA, which I'll be reviewing later, getting all of the benefits that you get from a really high performing planar and then this little touch of intimacy and dynamics and punch that you get, partly because of the DAC, believe it or not. The ESS Sabre DAC is a little bit more punchy and tight and controlled sounding than some of the other DACs I've used. I've used stuff from Burson. I tried the Cambridge DAC. I tried the Hi-Fi R2R DAC and Topping DACs. They're all a little bit, they have different, I guess, pros and cons. Mostly compared to this, I like this DAC implementation better. I think ESS plays really well into the Pitus Maximus sound. So if you're going to select one, I personally haven't heard the multi-bit. I think it's going to come down to personal preference. Maybe just go with an external so you can switch them out easily, or buy a couple modules and switch them yourself. So I realize I'm kind of going all over the place. I really didn't want to script the sound or at least script this part of the video, because there's a lot of little things that this does that just becomes more magical the more stuff you listen to. So if you listen to EDM or anything with like a synthwave sound, their synths just have like a little bit more resolution or bite to it. It almost seems like more energetic and spread out when you're listening to it on a headphone, but it doesn't come across as abrasive or grainy. So I don't know how it's extracting so much out of such subtle nuances of sound without being overbearing. That's seriously such a special trait that this thing has. I mentioned the bass earlier. A lot of good amps, as long as they have a really good power supply and it's built well. The deep bass, the power delivery is there. What was surprising is when you get to like the 80 to 200 hertz region on the bass of this, and how vibrant and full it sounded but also being very tight and controlled. That was a magical thing. I mentioned this before, when I switched over to the Cambridge DAC Magic, but used this as the amp. So I basically was just toggling my two sources. The Cambridge DAC paired with this has a little bit more bite to the snares, like the clap sound, if you will, or those higher frequencies have a little bit faster attack, but the bass was just smoothed over slightly. So I think that punchy dynamic bass I was hearing from the 80 to 200 hertz might also be partly a byproduct of that Sabre, the ESS DAC, that I didn't hear as much on the Cambridge one. So lots of good things. Now I did try it with some IEMs. As a parent, how much more I like some of my headphones over my IEMs, but they have really good bass delivery, good sound isolation, but it also exposed a couple things. So I'm going to be real. I always point out everything that I've experienced. That's why I didn't want to rush this review. If you're on high gain and you touch the volume knob and it's between, like, let's say 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock ish, there's a little bit of a buzz or hum sound that comes just by touching the pot. If I touch the chassis, I don't hear anything, but as soon as I touch the volume knob, there's a little bit of a hum. If I go to full volume, it goes away and I can touch it and it doesn't do anything. It's a really weird little characteristic with the way the potentiometer is affixed to the chassis or the PCB. There's also a noticeable difference on the high gain versus the other two modes. So if I'm not in high gain, if I'm on medium or low, there's no buzz whatsoever. It's dead quiet even if I touch the knob. So it's a unique thing just to high gain, which is good because you don't always need it. And it's not such an issue where it's like a game-breaking thing anyway. You know, it's, especially when you're listening to music, you can't tell. The other thing is on high gain with sensitive IEMs, you can hear a very subtle, very, very subtle noise floor. Now I have pretty sensitive hearing. I don't listen to my stuff too loud, and I hear hiss very easily with products. And I heard it just a little bit on high gain. And if you turn it up, obviously in high gain, I heard it just a little bit more. But other than that, it's quiet. Now on my open back headphones, I didn't hear anything. So it really just depends what you're connecting it to. So as far as pairings go, because of this sound signature, usually I feel like this, when you have any kind of special sauce, it usually works better with certain products and not so much others. I think it really just comes down to how well your headphone scales or how good the resolution is. You know, I wouldn't buy a $60 headphone and expect this to be a game changer as far as sound, but my goodness, does this scale with high-end headphones. These are not cheap. Some of these are pretty good, high-resolving, fast headphones, and the Pitus Maximus is just kind of on another level, to be honest. I don't think I've heard a headphone amp and DAC, or even just a standalone amp, under $1,000 that produced the sound I like as much as this has. This is just, seriously, it's close to perfect for what I'm looking for, because I love the stage. I love the textural layering that you get on a high quality product and headphone, but I don't want it like too forward or in my face too much. I don't want to lose the intimacy and that cozy feeling you get when you want to listen to that cozy song. I shouldn't have to switch equipment because I'm changing genres or I'm in a different mood. So this just walks this like tightrope line of that delivery of a lot of little nuances people are looking for in an audio product. Don't have to do the DAC, like I said. You can always use your own or just buy an external Modius DAC. I think that's $229 or something for an external, and it's the same chassis size, so you can just stack it too. So you have some options. If this sounds like it's overkill to you, but you want some special sauce, the Piety is still available. It's back in stock. Again, that's $175. I travel with it for a reason. Little Apple dongle. Bass is a little bit more bloomy, just a little bit more bite in the upper mid-range, but a little bit less resolving on the treble. It's an excellent amp. It's almost like a cross between solid state and tube, and that's been a lot of fun. Obviously the DSHA amp coming, my review coming on that, takes the whole intimacy thing to another level. That's just bonkers to me. So yeah, it's a fun amp DAC stack amplifier. We'll just focus on the amp side. I think it's worth its value in spades. I don't know how it's delivering what it is, and I hope you found this video helpful. I get no kickback from this. I'm not doing anything to make money. It's literally just me being very excited about something, frankly, I've truly enjoyed compared to a lot of the stuff I've had lately. It's been a really fun breath of fresh air. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you in the next video. Take care.